Good? Oh.
Now we are. Here comes Mr. Moritz. John Mansfield, are we streaming now? We're good?
We should be good.
Okay,
Yeah, you're all
Mr.
set.
Moritz. Okay, so let's call to order our first Budget, Finance, and Operations Committee meeting for the year. And why don't we start with our end of year financial report from Mrs. Brown.
Great, thank you. Jonathan, that is the slide deck that I had shared with you. If you could present that, please.
Did you need me or Jonathan?
Sorry, I meant
Thank
John
you.
Mansfield, sorry.
Thank you.
Jonathan's name is in front of me. So while he's getting that on screen, what I did was put together a year-end report, and it's broken down by objects that are contained in our uniform chart of accounts. And that chart of accounts is pretty much the same on the town side. And so what I have to do is give a list of where we finished over to the town. So I kept our report the very same so that everybody's getting the same information and it makes sense to all parties. I've listed some additional components that make up a higher level object. It's not meant to be an exhaustive list, but it contains most of the important points for today. So next slide, please. On each slide, you're going to see the same header that shows the original budget amount, any transfers that took place, what our actual year-to-date expenditure was, if there are any remaining encumbrances, and what the balance was in that object area for the year. So in this case, for certified salaries, which are primarily our teachers, administrators, and supervisors, anyone that holds a Connecticut State Department of Education certification, their salaries would fall here. Our original budget amount was $49,095,632. Throughout the course of the year, there was a little over 75,000 transferred out of that line. So we landed at 49,068,000, which would have been within budget, but because we transferred out at some points during the year, we fell over budget here by 47,872,000. I can tell you that included here in this object level is the substitute coverage for certified staff. And in the substitute coverage lines, we were over by 525,000. Understandable with a pandemic, lots more call in sick days. Whenever anyone was symptomatic with what could have been a simple cold, flu, sore throat, people were calling in. So as you know, to be very cautious. So that's what drove us over there.
Jill, in this line, would you also include in terms of the certified substitute coverage, maternity leaves and things like that?
Yes. Yes, but sometimes that helps us because if we get to the end of a maternity leave where there's a no pay situation, that might put the end of a salary back into the budget as available, but it would be offset by their substitute coverage. So that is in the mix, yes. Okay, next slide, John. Next is the non-certified staff. And again, following the same format, this is wages for non-certified staff, our paras, our secretaries, custodians, maintenance, OTPT, tutors, all of our IT staff, our accounting staff, and again, substitute coverage for this area. Here over the course of the year, 58,000 was transferred out and we landed with a balance, positive balance, $27,872.
Any questions? Just an observation that, you know, this is 60+% of our budget is in salaries or is somewhere on there. And between these two, we came in pretty much right on the money despite an ugly, weird year. So that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, definitely true. I think you're within 1% of budget. So very good planning for sure. Next one, John. Next one is the fringe benefits. And this is how it's titled on the town side. So I did not separate it into its components. Most of our $1.4 million positive balance is coming from the health insurance line, where we did have a credit due to some timing of the HSA funding. Also in here, the life, disability, pension, FICA, Medicare, which was right on target. Again, really good planning with wages and salary with the FICA and Medicare. Unemployment insurance, workers' compensation, and annuities. In workers' compensation, which is direct result of claims, we had 180,000 balance remaining. So that was also really good. You also had a very safe year. So that was good to see. Keep that number in the back of your head because we did need that to mitigate other areas where we fell significantly short. And you can see that some of these monies were used for that. Next slide. Professional services pay for services beyond the district staff, things like student evaluation and testing, any consultants that we might hire. I know there was a consultant here for a couple of months while this seat was vacant. Our legal services for any FOIA activity or negotiations activity, technical services, and some subscriptions are paid out of here. So here we were $15,000 under budget. So that was very good. Next is utility services, which covers sewer, water, and septic. The water consumption, we were slightly under budget and sewer was slightly over, but it balanced out and we had $18,299 remaining in this area. Next is equipment repair and maintenance. These are equipment requests that are taking place at the school level. I saw requests for music department, science, and art. For instance, there's likely a kiln at the high school, so they might have a repair budget for that. Things like that, smaller at the school level. Some of the technology items were the Cisco SmartNet annual renewal, some extended warranties after devices were purchased, and then our copier lease is in here. That's $286,000 of the $597 original budget. And then small projects across the district were also in here. I did look up, if you were interested, I can give a brief explanation of what happened district-wide. And I know Joe is on the line. At ERMS, we did some tree work. We replaced the audio system in the auditorium. There were rooftop units and LED light upgrades, and that was at ERMS. At Farmingville Elementary, repair work to boilers 1, 2, and 3. At Veterans Park, there was a removal of an existing portable, and then service calls for the boiler room. Apparently there was some flooding back in February before my arrival. There was some painting done at Scotland, at the high school, painting of the alternative high school, removal of some cabinets. There was work on bushes outside and glass partition walls for the counseling area. And at Barlow Mountain, the Dakin applied self-contained unit ventilator. So those were some of the projects that we worked on. And like I said, I know Joe is on the line if you had any questions about that.
Any questions? One from me, Jill. You said copiers were about $286,000.
The copier leasing
they're better than half of this entire budget is copiers.
Yes.
That seems like a lot to me for something we should have declining use of going forward.
That's the copier leasing agreement district wide. It's probably right on target for the amount of buildings that you have here. We can do some drilling down into that to see how many units are in each school, where they're located, and maybe we can do some consolidation there moving forward.
Just as an FYI, Sean, we did 2 years ago when we looked at this, or a year and a half ago when we looked at this line, we did go back to do a little research on a copy center, which some school districts have moved towards. some successful, some not so successful. I believe that that was a strategy here once a number of years ago.
Yeah.
I believe that it did not find itself successful on two parts in terms of service to faculty and also in terms of savings. I think ultimately they didn't find the savings that they were hoping for. But we'll take a little bit of a deeper look. I think one of the areas in which we certainly have saved on is paper related to the copiers and specifically color, where it's just not in ink. We're not using it in the same way, but the actual agreements and in certain documents, specifically around special education, that have to be sent in paper form, as well as offering digitally, is probably a big part of this.
Yeah, I get it.
Okay, so next slide, John. Next up is building repairs. You can see that this includes well monitoring, permits, fees, our pest management, testing and inspections, the school dude software system, elevator alarms and fire alarms, HVAC, and also here, which seems strange at first, our security guards and our SROs. But remember, those are folks that are not on our payroll. That's a hired service. And within the uniform chart of accounts, the security of the building falls within the maintenance of the building area. So that's why you see that here. And for the SROs, we do pay, they're an employee of the police department, so of the town, but we are reimbursing the town for their salary and their benefits. So it is a full cost to the Board of Ed. In this budget area, we were over budget in 3 places. The elevator service was over by about 20,000. The HVAC control services were over by 84,000. And the fuel tank maintenance was over by 16,000. Collectively, in this budget area of almost 1.7 million, we are over budget by 60,641. I know you might have some questions that come to mind later on, so you're free to email and I can send the answers out to the group if they come to mind later on.
We're also presenting again tonight, Jill, right? So the committee will have an opportunity. And just as a reminder, we shifted the timing in which this meeting takes place so that we can provide the Board of Finance with more of an accurate representation at the timing in which they meet, which is, I think, next week.
Yep, that will be next Tuesday night. So next up is our transportation services. Here you see that they're divided into several separate subgroups that fall under transportation. Collectively, we did a good job of staying under budget, but we did exceed budget in 4 areas in transportation. The daily contracted service was over budget by 115,000. I did drill down a little bit there. We paid for our magnet school transportation there. And I was trying to get an answer if we had an additional run at the beginning of the year. I didn't get my answer yet, but hopefully by this afternoon. I don't know if there was some social distancing to start the school year, so we may have had some additional expenditure there, but I will get that answer. We were also over for our vocational and technical students by 130,000. Our non-public in-town transportation was over by 64,000, and then the fuel for the buses, the fuel prices soared during the year. We were over budget there, 30,000, and a total of 13,290 was transferred out of the transportation budget during the school year. But again, collectively staying within budget to the tune of 93,491. Go ahead.
I have a question on this one. Do we have a breakout? I know we have one, I think we own 1 bus now, is that right? Or 1 van, 2. Could we start getting a breakout of the ROI on those compared to the others and break this out for the whole board on the cost for non-in Ridgefield schools versus the magnet and Voc Tech schools? I think it'd be really important for the public to start to see what do we pay for beyond our borders, not necessarily the sped stuff. I think everybody kind of gets that, But I know we've had some conversations about the magnet school in particular. And I think it's just enlightening for people when they realize what we pay for in our transportation budget.
So Liz, if it's okay, I'll just jump in for a
Sure.
minute.
Yeah.
So Liz, you had requested that the ROI on the 2 vans, that's actually part of what you'll hear tonight in terms of Jill Brown's goals around transportation. And there's specifically an action step around the return on investment of the 2 vans. You might also remember that we did look to the possibility of, because we moved the purchase of those 2 vans into the operating budget last year rather than the grant. But since we had revised the SR2 grant for those vans, we put in an order for 2 more. You will hear more about them. We have 1 already running. There's probably a reason that boards of education don't get into the transportation business. Partly is because in order to save money, which you ultimately will, it is a lot of logistical pieces, and you're going to hear more about that. It's not to say that it's not worth doing, but it's just a little bit more information to provide you in terms of context of how you save money when you're moving into owning some of your own vehicles, which again, I think is right now is worth the investment. That said, the second part of your question, which you'll also hear more about, is the savings relative to the magnet school that you're going to see happening in what's already there in this current year's budget. So I think Jill's goals around transportation this year, and they were partly Dawn's last year, but I think we know more now and will continue to know more over the course of the year with the new transportation director as well. So I think our focus is to provide you with some real meaningful, accurate information as we move through the course of the year.
Yeah, I mean, my goal in that question was really to start to show, I believe, and I hope that, the theory pans out, that ownership of our buses is probably in our benefit, at least at some mix level. And I'd love to be able to start showing that trajectory so that we can continue to build that case so that when we're ready to buy more, regardless of grants or whatever, it's a done deal, right? It's pretty common knowledge. The other thing is just education. I do think that there's a lot of misunderstandings about what the rules are in Connecticut about what we have to provide transportation for and what it costs the taxpayers of town. So that's where those are my 2 goals in that.
Thank you. Jill, is there anything that you wanted to add to what I shared?
No, but for this month, the end of August review, which is coming up just after this report, I do have some breakdown. I wouldn't call it return on investment yet because it's so early, but an estimated savings based on the van that's in service and the one that is coming into service hopefully within the next few weeks. I didn't break down the transportation into the sort of the more granular detail, but I can do that for you in the future so that it's reported out the way that you're asking. I'll make a note of that.
I think the fuel one is a big hot topic right now too, of how much more the fuel is costing us, just as such an uncontrollable variable, but it impacts all of us.
Yep.
Thanks, Jill.
Yep, I will do that. Thank you. So moving ahead to insurance, property, and liability. We did stay under budget here in all areas for insurance. Most notably was the property insurance line. We were under budget by approximately $150,000, which prompted me to call over to the town offices and speak to the controller there. He didn't have a lot of detail to offer, but he did say that we used to broker out coverage through Fairfield County Bank, and then we switched over to KERMA, and there was a pretty significant savings there. And he thought that the budget development time had happened before making that switch. And so moving forward, we will get renewal numbers through KERMA and hopefully be able to squeeze a little bit here to, make these savings visible in other areas as we go through budget development. But all good news there, landing with a balance of just over 181,000. Next is the communications and telephone. This is the voice over IP telephone service district wide. It's one budget line with 336,660 in the line. We did transfer out throughout the year, almost 29,000, and still landed within $4,000 on budget. Again, the voice over IP telephone service district-wide in all of our sites. Next is advertising services, which is our postage. Data cabling falls in there, which is a little odd, but it's in that object number. Advertising for recruitment in the personnel department, and then any other publications that we do. Here we finished slightly over, but very close to on budget. And if we didn't transfer out that $388, we would have finished almost on the nose. So pretty good news there. Moving on to printing services, which occurs mostly at the middle and high school levels. Only $6,800 here, but again, a line that the town had disaggregated out, so I did the same.
But a lot of that was the graduation, correct?
Most of that was actually printing for the adult ed program. But there's another one that you're thinking of that was supplies mostly for graduation coming up. So there we landed about $2,100 over budget. We did transfer out 1,000. Moving on to food management services. In the budget line last year, there was 65,000. That's been taken down to 50,000 for the current school year budget. And then last year, all meals were free, funded by the State Department of Education with federal emergency funding, the ARPA funding through the state. What we expended here was $20,940, and that was for the services of our nutritionist who's with us all year round. There were no other expenditures here out of this line for last year. Moving on to travel, mileage, and training. When our staff travels for either professional development, for required meetings or conferences, or if they travel between schools, we reimburse them at the current IRS rate. The conferences and training are the lion's share of the expenses here, which includes the school climate training. That is an ongoing goal. That school climate training accounts for about 115,000 of that 197 budgeted amount. We did transfer out just over 27,000 here, and we're ending with a positive balance under budget by 18,479. The next slide, I think, is what you were thinking of, Sean, the other purchase services, which includes microfilming. It's only $110 for microfilming. We have to have it because some of our records still exist on that platform. There, the lion's share is for graduation expenses and leadership training. Some of the graduation expenses were the honor cords, sashes, the videographer, flowers, the bagpiper, and the rental of the WCSU facility, waters that you had to have on site. So that's what takes place out of that 21,500. And we were right on budget, finishing with 211 left in the line. Next is for our tuitions. We had $2,821,000 budgeted here. We transferred in 3,800, and you can see we are over budget by $1,095,000. These are tuition costs for students that attend a program that is outside of Ridgefield Public Schools. You may see students online courses, that's mostly credit recovery. Some attend vocational technical schools or magnet schools for which we pay tuition. That may include a state-placed or a Nexus student, and also includes special education placements, both in and out of state. And that is offset by some reimbursement from excess cost, where we also fell short almost 229,000 of the anticipated revenue line there. It's without a doubt the most volatile section of our budget. We have to comply with all of the requirements of the IDEA. All kids are entitled to a free and public education. And if our program can't support the needs of an individualized education plan, then we have to fund it through a specialized facility that can. We have no control over who moves into the district or what a student's needs may evolve into. This is not anything that's unique to Ridgefield. It's a challenge in every school district that I have served. It's impossible to predict, and for whoever sits in this seat, it's very, very difficult because you're trying to balance and plan for every part of the budget, but then you have this real unpredictability here in special education, and we did fall short. I did
Jill,
ask.
Hey, Jill, can I just ask a question? How much of this is settlements that we went over? Because I think we budget, what, $1 million or $1.5 million or something like that for settlements for the year. I mean,
There's
that to me isn't really
1.2.
tuition. And I'm, you know, as a board, I think we need to talk more about our legal risk, even in an executive session, because that to me doesn't fall into quote unquote tuitions. It's very much a situation where we can prevent lawsuits at times, and we need to be a lot more predictive about that.
Yes, there is 1.2 million in the line for settlements, and
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you where you finished in that line as soon as I find it.
I knew it was either $1 million or somewhere north of that.
Just bear with me 1 minute
Yeah.
while I find this.
So as she's looking for that, Liz, and special education is going to be a topic that we're going to be talking about probably at every Board of Education meeting where we're talking about our financials. And Dr. Hanaway is looking forward to that, I think, for many, many, many different reasons. But the predictability part that that Jill has spoken to, as an example, we had 3 students that we could not predict were moving into town that had placements outside of the Ridgefield Public Schools already.
Yeah, to be clear, Susie, I wasn't asking anything about special ed. I was asking specifically about legal settlements, which I think this incorporates more than just special ed settlements. It actually includes legal settlements as well. Is that right?
Right. So I was going to get to that. There is a piece of the settlements, right? The way in which it's broken down, some can be absolutely that we're settling because a parent has made a decision to place their child outside of the school district where perhaps it wasn't our placement. So there's that piece. I think that's what you're speaking to. So it's that line.
Actually, I'm not. I'm talking about parents who choose to sue the school district for things that are either a perceived or real slight to them in some way against their rights. So it may be placement related. It may be something else.
So maybe we can break that down further. Some of it may be here, and then some of it might be related to legal services in one of the previous slides,
Okay.
Liz, that we navigate, which Jill spoke to with respect to FOIA but that is a line in which is a consistent challenge for us. It's because it's more than just FOIA, right? We're in that situation again, special education, general education.
Right.
Seems to be more on the special ed side, but we can certainly break that down for you.
Okay, thank you.
So in the settlement area, it was 1.2 million budgeted, and we did over exhaust that line by 386,582. And some of those are multi-year settlements. In the tuition for private school, we were over by 489. And then the excess cost reimbursement, where we had anticipated 1.4 million, we fell short of that by 229,000. So collectively, that's what's causing that line to be over.
Yes.
So yes, the settlements are also unpredictable, unfortunately. Like I said, it's the most volatile section of the budget. Very, very difficult to plan for. I can share with you that in my former school district, the city did elect to set aside up to 2% of our budget when we did have surplus specifically for special education because there's such volatility. Granted, that was a larger school district, so it was even more of a almost roller coaster where, you know, when kids are moving in and out. And when Sean and I were discussing this, when you have a school district that offers excellent services, it's a double-edged sword because folks are looking to move to a community that's going to support their child in the fashion that Ridgefield does. So it is costly. Moving on to supplies and materials. These are funding for all classroom, school, and office supplies, consumable supplies for our health and nurses' offices, funding for paper and awards for students, supplies for testing, evaluations, PD, softwares also in this area, as well as cleaning and maintenance supplies for all of our sites. We did go over budget because mid-year security cameras were added mostly to the elementary schools district-wide. I assume that probably was in response to Uvalde. Wasn't here at that time, but that's probably when the decision was made. Susie would be able to speak to that. And we also did finish the purchasing of ViewSonic units for all the classrooms. So that will all be equitable once they are all installed. You can see that we have encumbrances remaining here. Those are for the ViewSonics that are slowly coming into the district. And we're almost, well, we're over budget here by $129,335.
Yeah, so some of those were perhaps connected to Uvalde. Some were just that the cameras we were finding specifically at some of our sites were not of the quality that we needed to ensure that our schools were safe when children were in session and quite frankly, when they're not in session. So some of the upgrades that we can speak to is just being able to look at someone's the license plate and identify the number, for example, was blurry. That's a little bit less of a challenge now. So some of those shifts were not necessarily connected to a particular incident, but what we were noticing with our cameras over time.
Moving on is energy, electricity, gas, and fuel. This is our second area of concern moving into the current school year. We did finish the year here with a balance of $361,731. That's coming from the electricity lines in the schools. We did have several LED lighting projects and some solar panels put on the roofs of some of our buildings. However, the fuel oil, we started the year at 2.4477 per gallon. We ended the year at 3.80 per gallon. So we were over budget in our fuel oil by, I think it was 47,000 is the number in my head. It's not going to be the case in either line as we move into the new school year. Our pricing per kilowatt hour right now is 10.69. We're good through November. What we're seeing is about 7 cents more per kilowatt hour. When you multiply that by the hundreds of thousands of hours that we have in all of our buildings, I'm very, very concerned for the area of electricity and heating oil over the winter. You'll see at the end, we have 3 budget concerns moving forward, and that is our tuition, electricity, and fuel.
Hey, Joe, how ugly is it going to get?
I'm sorry, what?
How ugly is it going to get, electricity and oil?
Well, I mean, oil is starting to come down. So I have a little bit of hope that we're going to see something at least reasonable there. Electricity still is all over the place. I mean, it jumped down 3 cents a kilowatt hour on Friday or Thursday, then it was back up again. So it's really all over the place. Talking with Jill and Susie, I would definitely shy away from a multi-year contract. I mean, it would be ridiculous to do that. So what's favorable to us, our solar performance has been outstanding on those schools. I mean, Farmingville, Scotland, actually, we had 6 months off meter. So that was promising there. We're also seeing a favorable rate stability in delivery at the Eversource. Typically, I usually budget around 12.5 cents for that because, as you know, it's all over the place. I mean, you could get 7 cents, then it could go up to 18 cents or whatever. So particularly in this instance with this savings, we saw probably about a 3-cent decrease from what I had budgeted for. So again, as Joe said, you multiply that by the millions of kilowatt hours that we have, you know, that contributed, plus the solar. So I'm hoping that electricity, I'm hoping by the time, right now, you know, I have a couple inquiries out to energy brokers and everything, but if I can get to 15 cents on the generation side, I may lock in at that because I think that's about as stable as we're going to get for the short term.
I heard you say Scotland, we got 6 months off
Off
meter.
meter, correct.
So it wasn't just the 1 month where nobody was in the building anymore.
Well, it could have been, I was still off meter. I take any win, please, you know?
I'm with you.
But
right.
yeah, the solar, and plus we're going to be adding East Ridge now. And a lot of the variable here was we didn't have all the data in on the solar. A lot of the systems weren't commissioned at the time the budget, so there was really nothing to go by. So kind of leaving the numbers flat to the year before, kind of modifying them a little bit. Then we started to see some pretty high performing schools. So it was a perfect storm for that. You know, we saw this again with the COVID year when we shut the buildings down. But yeah, for this budget, it's going to take a lot of magic, I think, to sail this thing in on a good number.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah.
So next slide is budgeting for books. The original budget number was $515,656. We transferred $109,144 into this line with a final expenditure of $598,640, awaiting another shipment to come in. So you do see $19,836 in encumbrances there. So we are landing on the positive side with $6,324 available. I failed to mention at the onset, we do have a few encumbrances left. When we closed the year, we had 24 purchase orders still open. So that's why you see the encumbrances where we are awaiting either equipment or items delayed by our supply chain. Just a couple slides left in equipment. This is subject area equipment, hardware equipment for technology, custodial maintenance equipment, and equipment replacement district-wide. We're finishing the year over budget by just under 97,000. What caused the expenditure here when I was drilling down into this line was at the start of the school year, there was a lot of purchasing of classroom furniture and school furniture that was required to social distance and mitigate the spread of COVID. So we fell a little short here. We did transfer in almost 8,000, but that did not cover the overage. Next is membership dues and fees. This includes subject concentration memberships, things like, you know, National Council of Teachers of Mathematics. Many of our professional staff belong to memberships in their subject area, and then also district-wide, like our fees for CIAC and so forth. Here we were slightly over budget by $11,445. There is an area called miscellaneous, which at the end of our general budget, you can see items for music accompanists, student productions, parent meetings, assemblies, and uniform allowances for our custodial and maintenance crews. 79,488 in the budget here. We did transfer out just over 2,300, and we are ending with an available balance of 10,453. A small purchase order still open there, waiting on something for $400. I can't remember what that was. Last area would be the athletics program. I pulled everything associated with athletic programming after talking to Kevin on the town side, what he wanted to see here. He said, pull everything for athletics. So that's what we did. So this includes certified and non-certified staff, our trainers, our coaches, strength and conditioning, all supplies for our sports, consumable and non-consumable. Any repairs to our equipment, the bus service for our athletic contests, any purchase services, dues, fees, and revenue offsets, which are our pay to play for fall, winter, and spring sports, and the gate receipts. $4,000 was transferred out of this program. They are awaiting something coming in for $46.93, and they're finishing with $38,454 as available. When I drilled down a little bit, I did see that the budgeting at every coaching position is at the highest step. Most of our coaches we retain, but some turnover was there where a coach came in at a lesser amount. And then there were also maybe about a half a dozen positions in coaching that were not filled, whether it was a second or third assistant coach position, or, you know, there were just a handful that were not filled. So that's why he had a balance of $38,454. He did fall short of his revenue, anticipated revenue for fall, winter, and spring. So I was happy to see that we came in under budget here. And so that's our athletic programming.
Merely an observation on this one, and we talked about it last week, was we spend an outsized amount of time talking and twisting these numbers into knots about athletics. Something that touches way more than half of our students takes up 1.5% of our budget, less than 1.5%. And I think that's something important to point out.
And you definitely do have a high percentage of students that are participating in sports. So it is a nice, successful, healthy program. So our bottom line, you had a $102,260,087 budget. Next slide, John. Of which year to date we expended $100,007,199. We are awaiting $428,002, which leaves us with a surplus balance of $824,887. And once again, you can see that the surplus in our fringe benefit line, primarily the health benefit line, coupled with our savings in electricity, is what gave us that surplus. We were able to mitigate deficits in certified staff, again, mainly the substitutes, the building repair line, our supplies, and our special education tuition, with the majority of the surplus that we saw. And
So
then lastly,
I know hold on one sec. I know we can quantify the health benefit surplus. It'd be really nice, Joe, if we could find a way to quantify what solar panels have delivered for us. I know we're early in the program and we feel good about, you know, the savings, but it'd be nice if we could put a dollar figure against that somehow.
Yeah, I could probably, for Scotland and Farmingville, we could probably throw something together that would show the savings.
That'd be great.
Yeah. The other schools, right, there's just not enough data right now.
Yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
All right.
so lastly, yep, you can go ahead to that slide. Lastly, again, I just wanted to reiterate, the study of the year that's gone by has been an awesome learning tool for me. And it's also brought to light 3 areas of concern as we look into the current school year that we are in now. Again, the volatility of any outplacement. We don't have any control over the need, or very little control over the placement, no control over the cost. So that is always a concern. And then because of the climate in the world right now, we are very concerned about our consumption of electricity and heating oil. So you'll be hearing us report on that each and every month, kind of taking you along and letting you know where we're at. We wanted to bring these concerns forward to the town also, so that they know that based on the amount that we have budgeted, how many students we have outplaced now, how many have moved into the district already, and we're just in the first week of September, second week of September, and the fluctuation of the prices in electricity and heating oil. We just wanted that to bring that to their attention. If they choose to put some of that surplus aside in case we need those funds, I mean, I can make the recommendation if you would like. I think it would be a smart thing to do, but you know, that's going to be up to the town if they want to do that.
Thank you.
Any questions? So I guess we move on to budget status update.
It might be helpful if I share the status update for somebody who maybe doesn't have it in front of them. Can you guys see this screen here?
Yes.
Yes.
Great. So this is a budget status update as of the end of August for the current school year. For certified and non-certified salary, that is now 60%, up a percentage point from last year, 60% of our general fund budget. The health benefits make up another 15%. So collectively, 75% of our budget allocation from the town is our wages and health insurance. We do see surplus amounts in certified and non-certified staffing, but we do have several positions that remain open. So I think we're going to see those numbers fluctuate just a bit here in our certified and our non-certified salaries. For non-certified athletics, we have one area of the budget right here, this $30,837 that's showing as over budget. That's the ATC strength and conditioning coach. That line wasn't funded at all this year, which prompted me to make some phone calls. And so that position was moved into another line that's buried in the non-certified salary line. It's called athletic trainer and facilities line. So the money's there. We'll do an expenditure adjustment on our side so that we're not showing a negative there moving forward. Everything else looks in good shape as related to staff and benefits. For transportation overall, we had a pretty strong start to the school year. Most of our bus runs operated on time or close to on time for the first 2 weeks of school. We have been able to consolidate 2 bus runs. One was a full large bus from First Student, and the other was a private vehicle, which is where we've applied our first van run. We now own 2 vans. As Dr. DeSilva said, we've ordered 2 more, so they're on order coming into the school year. One of them is up and running. We hope to have the second one. I'm hoping for the October timeframe. We're awaiting a final inspection and still looking for 2 drivers to share the route of the day. The additional second van is going to allow us to consolidate 2 more private runs. So far, the estimated savings from the first van on the road would be $62,000 over the school year. Once the second one comes on, that's an additional $93,000 estimated annual savings just from those 2. So we'll monitor that, and you'll hear me talk about that each month because that is one of our district goals for the year. For energy, the electricity contract rate of 10.69 takes us through November. We're working with our providers and monitoring the generation rates, as Joe talked about earlier. Presently, it's looking to be somewhere between 4 and 7 cents more per kilowatt hour. But just the dip in the last week, it's, you know, we're going to have to time that right and hopefully get the best rate. And we are shying away from locking into any kind of multi-year contract. Additionally, the fuel prices have risen significantly. Currently paying $3.8055 over last year's $2.4477. So we are monitoring those prices as well. And then for special education, the budget is highly impacted by the transition of students with disabilities in and out of the district, most especially the students that require private education, residential or day programming. Of note, the district has welcomed back 4 students from private outplacements back into the district. But conversely, the district has 3 students who've moved into the district that were already attending private placements. You do see in special education a $2.7 million amount here showing as available. However, there are outstanding contracts for private outplacements that are being finalized. So you're going to see that number change too as we come into the coming months. Excuse me. Overall, the snapshot for August 31st, everything does appear to be running smoothly. Like I said, we're monitoring that energy consumption and special education. And again, you'll hear from us every month about the transportation reporting and our estimated savings there. And if there are any questions, we can talk briefly about transfers.
Any questions, Liz? Let's go to transfers.
I just stop share. For budget transfers, I did show you in your documents transfers for both July and August because we didn't have a meeting to go over that. There were 3. Well, first one on the line is the $950,000 from technology that we pulled out. We had talked about that during budget development. It was tagged as special education. You all voted on that, and then we made that large transfer. There were 2 other large transfers for special education. One was $189,137 in July. There were 2 in August. One was $194,030 and $29,091. That was not for purposes of expenditure for any other reason. It was just a change in placement from an in-state to an out-of-state placement. So I went ahead and did those changes so that I wouldn't hold up the purchase order. And I hope that that was okay with you because it wasn't for any other purpose, but what it was originally planned for, just the placement had changed.
Mm-hmm.
Then there were a couple of small transfer items. In facility in July, $3,196 was transferred from testing and inspections to elevator service to fund an annual agreement. And at the high school, from school-wide equipment to security supplies to fund the barrier gate in the parking lot at the high school. And then lastly, in facilities, $5,000 out of supplementary cleaning to fire alarm services for repairs at East Ridge. And that's it for transfers for July and August.
Great. Any questions? I think we've come to the end of our agenda. So I guess we're done. I don't think we have enough people to do a motion to adjourn things. So I will thank you all.
Great update.
We'll see you all tonight. Good information. And Liz, if you have any questions, send them over to Jill before tonight and we'll get what we need done.